There are moments in
I
sports
can't believe I
that
did
feel
it.
bigger than medals.
This is
Moments
the
that
best
feel
moment
like
of my
history
life.
quietly turning a page. This is one of those stories. It starts in Beijing in 1989, in the shadow of tanks and protest banners. And it ends on Olympic ice, under blinding lights, with a gold medal around the neck of a young woman skating for the United States. This is the story of Alysa Liu. And it is also the story of her father, Arthur Liu. A man whose life was shaped by the 1989 protests in Tiananmen Square. Let's slow this down and really understand what makes this story powerful. Because it's not just about skating. It's about memory, identity, and choice. Back in 1989, students gathered in Tiananmen Square calling for political reform. They believed in transparency, accountability, a different future. The Chinese government, under the control of the Chinese Communist Party, responded with force. The crackdown changed countless lives. Some were imprisoned. Some disappeared. Some fled. Arthur Liu was among those who felt the pressure of that political storm. Facing persecution and an uncertain future, he made a life-altering decision. He left China and sought safety in the United States. Imagine that for a second. Leaving your home, your language, your culture, your extended family. Not for adventure, not for opportunity, but because staying might cost you everything. When Arthur arrived in America, he was not a celebrity, not wealthy, not powerful. He was simply someone starting over. Like so many immigrants before him, he built a new life from scratch. And eventually, he became a father.
Now here's where the story shifts. Arthur Liu raised his daughter in the United States, not in Beijing. She grew up in California. She spoke English. She went to American schools. She watched American competitions. She laced up skates on American ice. From a young age, it was clear that Alysa was not ordinary. She had explosive jumps, fearless energy, and a calm competitive focus that coaches dream about. By her early teens, she was already rewriting record books in U.S. figure skating. She became one of the youngest national champions in American history. The spotlight followed her everywhere. And with that spotlight came something else. Interest from China. Because think about it. A Chinese-born father. A daughter of Chinese heritage. A rising skating star. In a sport where China has invested heavily on the global stage. There were reports that Chinese officials reached out. That they were interested. That they wanted her to represent China. It wouldn't have been the first time a country tried to recruit a talented athlete with dual eligibility or heritage ties. But here's the key part. She said no. She chose to represent the United States. Not out of rebellion. Not out of anger. But out of identity. She was born in America. She trained in America. Her life was shaped in America. And her father, who had once fled political persecution, understood exactly what that choice meant. That decision wasn't just about sports. It was about values. It was about history. It was about the freedom to decide who you represent.
Now let's fast forward. Years of training, injuries, growth, pressure, media hype, expectations. Figure skating is brutal at the elite level. It demands perfection measured in millimeters. Rotations judged in slow motion. Careers that can peak before adulthood. Alysa experienced the full roller coaster. Early success, burnout, even stepping away from the sport at one point. That's something people don't always talk about. The mental toll. The weight of being labeled the future before you've even figured out who you are. But resilience runs in families shaped by history. She returned to competition. And when she stepped onto Olympic ice wearing the red, white, and blue of Team USA, she carried more than choreography. She carried legacy. And then it happened. A gold medal. For Team USA. In that moment, the story came full circle in a way that almost feels cinematic. A father who once fled a system he believed was unjust. A daughter who had the opportunity to represent that same nation and declined. And then she wins gold for the country that gave her family a second chance. Let's be clear about something important. Sports are not foreign policy. Athletes are not diplomats. But they're symbols. And symbols matter. For Arthur Liu, the events of 1989 were not abstract political debates. They were lived experience. Risk. Fear. Survival. For Alysa, skating was not about geopolitics. It was about joy, discipline, and competition. Yet their stories intersect in a way that highlights something powerful: the freedom to choose your path. No government assigned her identity. No official dictated her flag. She chose. And that choice was respected. That's the part that resonates. Now, let's talk about what makes Alysa such a compelling athlete beyond the political narrative. She's technically gifted. Her jumps have height and snap. Her triple axels earlier in her career turned heads worldwide. She has that rare mix of athletic aggression and musical sensitivity. But what really stands out is her composure. Under Olympic pressure, the arena feels different. The air is heavy. The silence before the music starts feels endless. And she delivered. Clean landings. Strong spins. Emotion in every step sequence. You could see the maturity in her skating. Not just a prodigy anymore. Not just a headline. An athlete who had grown up. There's something poetic about ice skating in this context. Ice is fragile. It melts. It cracks. Yet under pressure, it can hold incredible weight. That feels symbolic of this family's journey. Fragile beginnings. Massive pressure. Holding strong. Arthur Liu once stood in a moment of political upheaval. Decades later, his daughter stood in a moment of athletic triumph. Two very different stages. Two very different kinds of courage. But courage nonetheless. Some people will try to frame this story purely as East versus West. That's too simplistic. This isn't about hostility. It's about personal conviction. It's about a family that experienced one version of history and chose a different future. It's also a reminder that immigrant stories are layered, complicated, emotional. Arthur didn't erase his past by moving to America. He carried it. And Alysa didn't reject her heritage by skating for the United States. She honored her upbringing. Both things can be true at once. When she stood on the podium, medal shining, national anthem playing, cameras flashing, you could imagine what that moment meant privately. Not politically. Personally. For a father who once left his homeland under pressure, watching his daughter stand freely on a global stage must have felt surreal. Because freedom is not just a slogan. It's the ability to decide. To stay or to leave. To speak or to be silent. To represent one flag or another. And here's why this story resonates so widely. It's not just about skating. It's about generational arcs. One generation survives. The next generation thrives. That pattern is familiar to many immigrant